and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Kwadwo Kyeremanteng is a critical care and palliative care physician at the Ottawa Hospital. Dr. Kyeremanteng, also known as Dr. C, mercifully for podcast hosts like me, cares for the sickest of the sick patients in the intensive care unit, or ICU. As a researcher, he is interested in using ICU resources more efficiently and improving access to palliative care in the ICU. To do this, he founded the Resource Optimization Network, a multidisciplinary research group working to reduce health spending in this area without compromising care. In September of 2019, Dr. Kyeremanteng launched his fast-growing podcast, Solving Healthcare with Kwadwo Kyeremanteng. These podcasts feature interviews and discussions on the topic of improving healthcare delivery in Canada. Underpinned by the values of cost, effectiveness, dignity, and justice, these podcast episodes challenge the status quo, leaving no stone unturned as Dr. K explores gaps, assumptions, and different perspectives in the pursuit of finding solutions to problems in Canada's healthcare system. Dr. Kyeremanteng was a presenter at Low Carb Denver 2023, where I met him in person. He's absolutely a wonderful human being, and it is an absolute honor to welcome him to Boundless Body Radio. Kwadwo.
Bob. Oh, man. Number one, you make me feel like a prince. That was a great intro, and I appreciate that. And it was great running into you at Low Carb Denver, and it is an absolute privilege to be on the show. So thank you.
It's such an honor to host you. It's just something different to like really be in the presence of people that are making these incredible presentations. Like you don't realize to us in the audience, you're our superstars. Like you are the rock stars. And then you just come off the stage and like chat us up. Like for us, it's like way special to like see you on stage, see you make this amazing presentation. And then I can just chat with you about whatever after the conference. It was just really wonderful. It was wonderful to meet you. And I really got a sense of who you are as a human being. And it's wonderful.
That's very kind. But you got to remember, everyone in that audience was trying to make a difference.
That's right.
Like we're all have that same path that we want to try and improve the health and well-being of people. So I must say we're the same. We're all part of the team, and we're all trying to go towards that same path. So I it's kind of you to say, but yeah, like we're all in it together.
Yeah, dude. So one of the things I decided on, I'm so glad I decided to do this, is I made a calendar link for any of the attendees to do a 10-minute interview with me that I then made into a composite episode that was the stories of random people at Low Carb Denver. And because I did that, I got to meet a lot of people. Like, of course, it's really easy to introduce yourself and, get to know somebody's story by talking to them, but something different when you get a record. And so I got a sense of a bunch of people who were there for different reasons. Some are healthcare practitioners. Other people like are on the journey. One guy I interviewed, Mike, 61-year-old guy. He's overweight. He's only overweight because he had a heart attack last year, learned about low carb from Dr. Barry. He's lost like 60 pounds, and he's so lit up that he's coming to this like highly technical, medical-based, research-based conference. So you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't appreciate that. So it's such a good point that you made, that all of us in that room have a story to tell, and we've got a journey of health, and we're trying to get that message out there. So that's a really great point.
Absolutely. And you think of even that what was his name? Mike, you said? The 61-year-old guy? Think about the power he has. He's a story. He lived it. He's the one that gets to express what he went through as going through a heart attack and losing that 60 pounds. So that testimonial is more powerful sometimes than anything that we're saying.
Yeah. Like
you go like that interview with him, I guarantee someone sitting on their couch saying, I could be Mike, be like Mike.
Yep.
And so honestly, this is the power of that room. That's the power of that conference. It was amazing.
It was amazing. And I brought you on today. I thought we would be talking about health stuff, but the time of year that it is, it's the most wonderful season of the entire year, which is called Stanley Cup playoffs time. You are a fellow hockey player, which is amazing. And you're a fan of the Edmonton Oilers. Is that correct?
You nailed that one, my friend. It's been a long time coming, but my oil, we're talking on, was it May 8th? So the second round, they're tied 1-1 with the Vegas Golden Knights. But I'll tell you, as watching the best player in the world, Connor McDavid, right?
Dude.
And knowing that he's not even our number one player right now, we got Leon Draisaitl pushing the tempo with 13 goals. it's been fun, and I'm right now I'm in Ottawa, but this would be, if we go deep, I'm taking my boys. We're gonna go watch a game or two, dude, wherever it might be. Oh my goodness,
that's amazing.
Who's your team?
Yeah, good question. So, I live in Salt Lake City. We used to have a AAA affiliate here in the Valley that was an affiliate of Calgary. So I grew up as, a 2-year-old worshiping hockey. I got to see Theo Fleury play, who's also been on this podcast, by the way. You're now a podcast. Seriously? Yeah, you're a podcast. What do you call it? I can't remember when you guys have been on the same. Yeah, exactly. Your podcast, brother, with Theo Fleury. And I just worshiped hockey. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. So Calgary was always a team that I loved growing up. Being here regionally, we love the Avalanche. We obviously also love Vegas, which is really close to us. And it was pretty funny. About a month ago, my wife and I took a vacation down to Vegas. And as I pulled up to the hotel, I realized that the Vegas practice facility was literally like a 3-minute walk away from my hotel. So I pulled up Twitter. I found out that they were practicing right at that spot. And I got there in time to go check out part of the practice. Most of it had ended. There was just like maybe 3 or 4 guys on the ice. They're just goofing off. There's no coaches. They're the worst guys on the team, probably 4th line guys who are they're just goofing around. These guys are huge. And the things that they can do with the puck is insane. Again, just goofing off. Like one of the equipment managers was on the bench, was talking smack to one of them. So one of them from the far side of the ice flipped the puck up like 50 feet to hit above the guy and drop down onto the bench to hit like 3 feet away from this guy to scare the crap out of him. These guys are incredible to watch.
Oh, it's a great point. Even it's not a big of an issue as it was, but the goons, the guys that were paid to fight, I've seen a couple of those guys play with just, whether it's just shinny or just messing around. Their skills are ridiculous. It's crazy. Like we did an alumni game a couple of weeks ago, and even guys that were in their 60s, I couldn't get the puck off.
That's crazy.
And hey, I'm not horrible. You know what I mean? Like, so it's. Yeah, the skill level's insane, especially now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're coming up with just the craziest hands and whatever. I was just going to say, too, I believe you said you're 210 pounds. I saw you in person, obviously, in Denver. I would make sure that I would take you first pick because I would not want to play against you. Dude, you could send me probably into the 8th row if you dropped a hit on me, dude.
Oh, no. I mean, but you never know with some guys. It's about that center of gravity. It's that, that muscle, how well you carry yourself on the lower half. But yeah, mind you, it's funny. Like growing up in Alberta, there's a lot of big boys. So like I was middle of the pack, if not even in some groups, like on the smaller side. But yeah, it's crazy how big and quick human beings are these days.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, so cool that we share that. I love hockey as a sport. I'm glad you do too. It's such a cool shared passion. I guess we should move on and talk about your main specialty, which is stuff in the medical field. And as I was thinking about this conversation, I was actually thinking about one of my favorite TV shows, which is South Park. For the first like 6 or 7 seasons of South Park, they would typically end the episode by saying, you know what? I learned something. And one of the kids would say whatever he learned that was like something stupid about like racism or voting or whatever the episode was about. It would play like the kind of piano music as the kid said something he learned. Inevitably, they never learn anything. So one of the episodes, maybe in season 6 or 7, one of the kids goes, dude, I think I learned a lesson here. And the other kid goes, no, we didn't, dude. No, we didn't. I feel that way about the pandemic. I feel like we're on the other end. We could have learned something. And I'm like, no, we didn't. I don't think we learned anything.
At so many levels, I'm a little anxious about that. With the theme of health, we really had this opportunity to get behind the idea of all of us getting healthier. And the reason I'm saying that is during that first wave of the pandemic, we didn't have vaccines, and it was abundantly clear that if you were obese, if you had prediabetes or diabetes, if you had metabolic syndrome, you were at risk of landing in ICU and dying from COVID. And it was clear. There was early data to support that, and we were seeing it daily. And instead of publicly saying, hey, we see this link, folks, of of being overweight and having poor outcomes, let's talk about ways that we can get healthier. Not only because of COVID, but because of heart disease, because of strokes, because of cancer. If we have that positive energy in these spring, summer months to learn these habits and have that dialogue and get some excitement around getting healthy, imagine what that could do generationally. Wow. And people were so scared. This was the time to kind of, and if you're going to leverage fear, that was the time to leverage fear in terms of for good. Was, hey, let's try and learn how to eat. Let's learn how to move. Let's learn how to reduce our stress. Why not? Like, what's the harm? And so, in terms of lessons, I feel like we missed out on that. And then, like, I don't know how it was in your state, but up north, there was a lot of fear messaging. There was a lot of non-holistic views of the pandemic. So we ignored, as far as I'm concerned, I know this is an opinionated viewpoint, but our children's needs, I think we did bad. Every other aspects of health, basically, I think we ignored. Mental, physical, like screening, all these aspects of health, we just basically ignored it for the sake of the pandemic. And I think that was a mistake. So I hope we learned that's because some of the interventions were led to worsening for conditions for many of our population. But I think we need to reflect on that and pivot next time something like this happens.
Yeah, no, and you're totally right. Like, what is this going to hurt? We can talk about whatever measures we decide to take collectively to help protect each other, ourselves, or whatever. That's fine. Like, it's a weird thing. It was a new thing at the time, and we were learning about how to treat things. But why not talk about some of these other things we already knew? I was an attendee of the 2020 Low Carb Denver, and that was the weekend that the shutdown was starting. And everybody in the room felt pretty good about the situation. It was a lot of unsurety. People were, nervous about what was going on for their own personal health. Though I didn't think I talked to anybody that wasn't like, well, I've been low carb, I've been keto, I know I don't get sick, I don't get the flu, I'm not really worried about this, and it was fine. And regardless of how serious people took it, like, you could have shared both, right? You could have taught people about the importance of vitamin D and the importance of making sure you're metabolically healthy and changing your nutrition. And the people that I tried to share that message with, they didn't seem like they even wanted to hear it too. So it was an interesting situation.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Like, when you say people didn't want to hear it, do you mean like people that were like just your average person, or people that are of influence or that maybe can help get a message out there?
For me, it was more like family. Like, I was trying to understand what the situation was. And I remember, sending a group chat to my family and just saying, like, look, guys, this is a weird situation, but here's some things you could try with your nutrition. Maybe you could do this to help boost your immunity. And I just got like, dude, we don't want to hear about that. We don't want to know about it. And so I don't know, there was a weird resistance to it. Again, it was early on in the pandemic, and so maybe that was part of it. But what about you? Like, as you have been sharing this message from before the pandemic, how has the reception been?
Yeah, it's been mixed. So there hasn't been like blatant negative messaging around it when I'm preaching for folks to get healthy. There hasn't been, hey, quit fat shaming folks or anything like that. That never was a concern. It was just, I think a lot of people just were really preoccupied with other things. And what I was just a little bit surprised at a bit when it came to the mainstream media, when it came to even on the medical side, that we didn't rally behind this more. But every once in a while, you would meet people and you would give them this message, and they said they had no idea, and you'd see their eyes light up and realize that maybe they got to do something. Like, we would frequently get stories about how our platform helped people improve their health, come off their diabetic medications, help them lose 30 pounds. Even one of my favorite stories was one of our ICU docs. He saw what we were seeing, that there was a direct link with metabolic health, and he was pre-diabetic, and he through fasting, through a bit of low carb, lost 30 pounds that he needed to lose, way better shape, reduced his risk of getting sick from COVID significantly as far as I'm concerned, and was a role model. And people would constantly ask him, what did you do? Just basically he would tell them his story. And it was a motivator for so many folks, especially seeing a relatively, in our hospital, a high-profile doc improving their health. Like, that's powerful. So even if it wasn't people coming in droves wanting to improve their health, all it takes is a few. And in my mind, that sometimes could start that conversation. It could start that momentum. Like, yeah, was there resistance, or was it were people excited about it? Not particularly.
Yeah. And you're right. It's kind of a two-way thing. Like, people needed to be open to the information. And of course you found people that were open to it and changed their lives and changed other people's lives, which is wonderful to hear. But you can't help but wonder if the message is coming from more sources that were at the top, the mainstream kind of stuff, and that message got taken down. You wonder how much different things would have been. I mean, my 9 o'clock news a few weeks ago ran the story about that stupid quote unquote study that said keto-like diets cause heart issues, which is absolutely ridiculous. Dude, that made my 9 p.m. network TV news. They reported on that. It's not even a study. It's ridiculous where they're getting these numbers from and the message they're sharing. And it sucks because, anybody who's maybe even considering a ketogenic or a low carbohydrate diet to improve their metabolic health, watch that. And they said, see, I knew it. I knew that eating eggs and bacon for breakfast was bad for me. I'm going to go back to eating cold cereal. And that's all they're going to know about it. They're going to be closed off from the beginning because of some stupid headline from, a quote unquote study that made no sense. It's so dumb.
But it's exactly as you said, this point, if it came from the top, man, it would be validating and more people would want to listen. And instead, as you said, feels like it's an uphill battle when topics like that make the news. Like, and I'm 20 years deep-ish in my medical career, and a lot of those topics around nutrition, around keto, low carb, all that, I have never heard of until I started hosting my own show. So you start interviewing some of these experts in our field. And what does that say about the state of our education healthcare system when I literally, I thought it was near impossible to reverse type 2 diabetes. It wasn't something I was hearing about. Maybe I was hearing it through bariatric surgery, but people going keto and then coming off their diabetic medications over a short period of time, that was absolutely foreign to me. And I would even, for giggles, next time you see your family doctor or any doc, just ask some questions around it and just see what kind of answers you get. Even diabetic specialists, I would love to see how they respond to that, because, like I said, this is not the norm when it comes to medical education.
Yeah, it's too bad. And it's part of the reason why when everybody says, like, we need our doctors to get more education around nutrition, initially that sounds like a good idea to me, but frankly, I'm not really in support of that, because the information that will be given will be all the wrong stuff. And you're giving it to people that have a lot of influence and are just going to have more bias towards the incorrect information, which is a shame. You'd almost rather have doctors go out and, feel sick and feel bad about not helping their patients and wonder if there's a better way, and then make their way on their own dime and on their own time on a weekend to a health conference like Low Carb Denver so that they can learn from other experts all over the world. That might be the best way that this goes forward, is continuing this grassroots movement. And you are such a big part of this, which is why I was so excited to get you on. You alluded to your medical career. I do want to hear your personal story, which I actually don't know that much about. So tell us how you got interested in medicine, what you decided to specialize in, and how you eventually got to this message of metabolic health.
Yeah, that's a fun question, Casey. Actually, I knew from a young age I wanted to get into medicine. I was a kid that had a lot of seasonal asthma, but landed in hospital, and I had this amazing pediatrician named Dr. Conradi, who I've just recently found out was a prisoner of war for 2 years, and by saving one of the enemies, he's German background, but saved a Russian soldier, and then was pulled in by the Russian army and was a POW for 2 years. Wow. And the reason I wanted to say that, one, because he was an amazing human being, and two, I've always felt a connection with this guy, and he was always, and I think it was because he was about justice and doing the right thing and adhering to his principles, which is something that's so important to me. But I just recently found out 2 weeks ago, and I actually made me a little bit emotional thinking about it, because, you know, sometimes you feel connected to somebody and you're not sure why, but that added to it. So basically, I wanted to be like Dr. Conradi, this guy that when I was as sick as I was, with my mom and parents were as anxious as they was, be able to walk in the room, put his hand on my chest and just calm down my breathing, letting me know it was going to be okay, and just ooze confidence and resolve. And I just wanted to be him, and did a little bit of a circular route, but eventually got into medicine. I had the 2-year gap year, where I met my wife and had the funnest job of my life, which was bartending, which is another story. And then we got into medical school. Was a bit unclear on what specialty I wanted to go into, but walked into the ICU in Calgary and immediately fell in love with it. The action that was around me, the working as a team, the not knowing what's coming through the door, the procedures, the communication with family, how vital it was during taking care of somebody that was in their most vulnerable times, was calling. And I knew it was for me, so jumped on that. And then as I was training, had some exposure to a mentor in palliative care and fell in love with that. Really is really a huge privilege to be able to help people in their final days and weeks, and their families navigate through a really challenging time like that. And then worked in the ICU for a while, did a master's in health administration, and really did a big emphasis on how we could improve healthcare delivery, at the same time save healthcare dollars. Found that it wasn't, we were producing a ton of papers, but nothing was changing. So started the podcast, Solving Healthcare, to try and get the word out. And then the pandemic hit, and we were seeing what we were seeing with metabolic syndrome, and then started to interview some folks such as Brett Scher and Rob Wolf and Jason Fung, all these folks that are teaching me that you could reverse some of these syndromes. And so then after that, I was possessed, because if you're looking at a way to save healthcare dollars, that's the ultimate way, is preventing people from actually needing healthcare, needing the sick care system. So then I was on a mission. We'll cover this on a show. We had a low carb summit in the middle of the pandemic. And then luckily, because of a bit of exposure, got to be invited to talks such as Low Carb Denver or Metabolic Health Summit. And now I'm in it. I'm possessed. I'm trying to get people healthy and motivated and just getting the word out.
Yeah. I certainly understand having an obsession about this stuff once you learn about it. So was that not the original intention of the podcast? Were you literally learning along kind of with the listener about some of this stuff as you were hosting different people on the show?
100%. Wow. I didn't know anything about this stuff. So just to give you a sense of some of what we covered earlier on, it was, the important need of having advanced care planning if you're older and elderly and frail, just so that you receive care that you want. We had shows on virtual care. We had shows on patient experience, how we could learn from that to improve care delivery. And then we started hearing about this virus in January. So my first COVID interview was in late January, actually. And then wow, then we covered it big time. And it wasn't just hey, what is the COVID 19? What's your risk and such? But it was also, our approaches, what we need to learn, how we could approach this better, how, we could, how we should be approaching this with our kids. Talked about a lot of the vaccine, who needs it more than others, the policies. We covered all that, but really, the show was really going to be focused on anything around healthcare, improving it, delivery, and saving money. And then, then the metabolic health stuff was just so clear as a big piece for people. We couldn't ignore it.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk financials. You made some really interesting points in your presentation. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what was it like to not only be reporting on something, but to be literally on the front lines with all the other healthcare workers facing this thing that again is a naive virus for the first time? What was that like for you?
It was scary. I won't lie. Like we had conversations at our dinner table about how we're going to handle being there, and I was there for our very first patient at one of our sites, and it was scary, and it was scary because of everything you were seeing on the media, but also you didn't want to bring it home. You didn't want to get your family sick. And what soon developed out of fear, though, was this kind of sense of duty and this almost this purpose. I almost looked forward to coming to work because everyone was home, everyone was stuck at home, and they were scared, but we were doing something of meaning. We were helping people navigate through this tough time, and it was the connection that it created with our staff was unbelievable. Like I'm closer with our staff now than we ever were before. And that's one of the lights that came out of this dark time was that piece of having that purpose, feeling fulfilled, feeling like your work meant something. Like that was big.
Yeah.
And and like I'm sure it was similar in Utah where people were supporting the staff and kind messages and social media and so forth, and that got to us and really meant the world, because a lot of this work that we've done throughout the years would go unnoticed, and just being frank, often would be underappreciated as well. For like, I wouldn't worry so much about the docs, but the nurses, the respiratory therapists, the physiotherapists, their work often would be unnoticed or underappreciated. So one of our big areas of interest was trying to pump up their tires and let the people know that these nurses, physiotherapists, respiratory therapists, they are heroes, and we need to celebrate them. So we try and point toward their excellent work for wherever we could.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's amazing. And we're so grateful for all of you for really stepping up in a scary situation and taking care of the rest of us. Around here, it was that we definitely were appreciating people in the field. I was shocked at how quickly that seemed to turn from we love and appreciate you, thank you so much, to almost being like the medical system is part of the problem and you're passing misinformation and all this stuff. And like, you got to see it kind of switch a little bit. And it was really disappointing to see that. But anyway, how long do you recall it taking you realizing that like what you were actually seeing was different than the narrative that was being put on the media? Was it fairly quick? Was it like weeks or months? Or how long did it take before you started to see like, wait a second, we're focusing maybe on the wrong things. We're not talking about the things we need to actually make a difference in this issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. It did not take long. It was a couple weeks, a few weeks. Yeah, I would say so. Like you got to understand, you're always looking for patterns in everything. Like we have this might seem like it's coming out of left field, but there's a condition called autoimmune encephalitis that we were seeing a lot of regionally, and it's a rare condition that causes uncontrolled seizures and leads to death. And so when we started seeing those kind of cases come in and more frequent, of course you want to find patterns. You want to kind of ask yourself, are they coming from a specific region? Is it a demographic? Is there a genetic component? All these things, right? Same thing with COVID. And we're all smart people, right? And pattern recognition is one of the things that everybody has. Sometimes it's subconscious, but everyone has it. When you saw everyone with the same story, they're either ultra old, usually still frail and have comorbidities, or they have a poor immune system because of cancer treatment or because of medications to suppress their immune system, or everyone you're seeing was obese or pre-diabetic or diabetic. That's not hard to unnotice, or that's not hard to notice. Sorry, like that. It's very clear. You know what I mean? Like, especially when your average patient in ICU, yeah, most patients are probably obese or have other comorbidities, but that level of frequency was abundantly clear. And so that's why I think that's why it didn't take long to notice. And literally, we're all fearing that healthy people would come in and get sick with this. And when you're noticing that none of them are healthy, that's also a click that goes on, right? You know, because you're hearing on the news a bunch of healthy people getting sick and dying, but I'm not seeing it. And of course, and before I get the IG messages and so forth, of course, there's going to be healthy people that got sick. It happens, like with anything. You get enough people sick, that's going to happen. I'm just saying, at a personal level, I have never taken care of somebody that was completely healthy from COVID-19. Full stop. You know what I mean? So that's why I think it was
no exception.
So, I mean, I'm trying to think, like, I always get pushed a little bit. And I remember seeing somebody, I didn't take care of them directly, but their risk factor was they were older. And they didn't look, from the story, they didn't look obese. They didn't look, I'm pretty sure they did not have any diabetic medication, but they were older. But once again, completely healthy 43-year-old or whatever, I didn't see this.
Okay.
Right? Like, even the ones that people would say were healthy, like the closest to it was, I saw a guy that was in his 30s, probably about, say if he was about 6 feet tall, he probably weighed in at about 220, but like not the good 220. You know what I mean? So that would be the closest. But even in that case, the guy didn't land in ICU. So I really did not take care of somebody that was completely healthy.
Okay, gotcha. You are the second person that I've talked to directly. One of them was my client who had direct experience in the ICU, dealt with this from the beginning, probably anecdotally cannot speak to other ICUs or other states or regions or places in the world, but exactly the same thing. The people that were quote unquote healthy were undiagnosed, but they had something. They were pre-diabetic, or they were clearly obese. Something else was going on. There wasn't healthy people that were making it to the hospital. Yes, maybe there was a question of transmission with young people. Yeah, you got sick, but most people were fine. But I never heard that in the media, that like, you always heard the same messaging that like, young people get this too, healthy people get this too. You're just as likely to die as somebody with all these comorbidities. And yet I'm talking to people who were there on the front lines, and according to them, that was not their experience.
Yeah, there was some momentum at some point that fear was going to be the way we're going to navigate people through this. And I fundamentally have an issue with that in medicine. Like, this is not where we know this doesn't work. We learned this through the HIV epidemic, that this is not a strategy that's going to get long-term benefit. Be real with folks. Say, this is what we think. This is what we think is the best treatment. This is the best approach. We could be wrong, but this is what our best educated guess is. And as we gain more information, we'll respond appropriately. Be real with folks. because the impact of being so fear-driven, that has consequences too. That has like the level of anxiety, depression, that energy that gets feeded down to our kids that often could be generational. The kids that now, because of the system is strained, that can't get access to care, that can't get access to mental health services, like all these downstream impacts. The faith in public health, you think a lot of people didn't see like where's that trust going to be when you need it, when you're not going to be real with folks? You know what I'm saying? Like all these things have consequences. So that's why the fundamentals is being upfront, being real, and that's how you gain rapport. That's how you gain trust, because at some point you're going to need it more than you need it now.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's a great segue. I was going to ask you, how do we start to build up that trust again? Just besides telling people the truth, about their own health and experiences, is that the best way that we can develop a better way forward and reestablish that trust? Because it's like we said, to open up this part of the conversation, like I don't believe we're going to learn anything from any of this. The next pandemic that comes around, we're going to have significantly less trust in leaders that are feeding us information that may or may not be true. Like, is that the best way? And on that note, are you optimistic or pessimistic that we have learned those lessons and that we can do better moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the best path, like if I were in charge, what I would have done is had almost like a public debrief about it, like just be completely open about some of these policies and what we regret, what we thought worked well, the approaches that we think we would do again or avoid, to show that to the public that we saw what you see, like we see what you see, we see your concerns, we hear them, saw them, and this is how we're going to pivot next time. These are the lessons we learn, because people are thriving for honesty and realness, the stuff that we've been missing out on for so long. So that's what I would do if I was in charge. I think I'm mostly an optimistic person, so I'm going to leverage that and just say that with a need to be more open, with younger leaders going to be coming through. A lot of people recognize that we need to do better, that the same mistakes won't be made again. I do think some issues are unavoidable at this stage, like politicizing a lot of these issues, I think will happen because politics drives so much. But will we be so married to them? Masking's got to be left or right wing. Well, the mandate's got to be left or right wing. Like, I hope in the future we're going to be a little bit less tied to that, but it will happen. But I'm going to say that we're going to learn from this, especially from this younger generation of future leaders, that they know what happened and how their lives got impacted, and will have that motivation to avoid going through that again. So I'm gonna go with leaning more on the positive.
No, I like that. That generation, I've talked about this before on the show. I am pretty optimistic about this generation. I think they're being bamboozled, and I think they can see it, and they're finding media in other places. Like, more people are listening to Joe Rogan, for example, than are watching the nightly news, as is more traditional. And I see a lot of the younger generation asking interesting questions and being interested about different things that other people aren't. So I love the optimism, and I will go with you, and hopefully we can get that, changed over time. Talk a little bit about the finances of what is unsustainable about our state of metabolic health. You flashed some numbers in your presentation that was pretty astonishing for like a single day in the ICU and how much that cost, and how are we going to end up paying for this without this breaking us?
It's crazy. Like, you're in the States, it's one of the most, a lot of money being spent in healthcare and not always seeing that dividend. But right now, for example, your average cost per day in an ICU is around $3,000, whether you're in the US or Canada. The average cost, we were talking about the conference, of a COVID admission to an ICU was over $50,000. And what we see with metabolic syndrome is that it's a risk factor of landing in an ICU, whether it's because of your heart, whether because of a stroke, whether it's cancer related or infection. You're at more risk when you have metabolic syndrome. So the argument we were talking about is, if you invested any little piece of that $50,000 of that COVID admission, for example, into prevention, what could that look like? What would if you had access to some feedback through a fitness tracker or a step counter, or access to a health coach, whether you had access to a nutritionist or a personal trainer or something that you wanted to work on that was going to be supported. Wow. I just feel like that could make a huge difference in people's lives. And the thing too is, if you have an unfortunate event that happens to you, that lands you in a hospital, when you're healthy, you're much less likely to, number one, die. Number two, stay in hospital forever or more. Number three, you're more likely to get home and live that life that you want to live. I'll give a quick story if we got time. It was one of our patients. He's in his 70s. He experienced a cardiac arrest after he had a fall. So he died for 2 or 3 minutes in his 70s. And the typical story from that is that we see is you don't go home after something like that. You might survive, but you're in a nursing home. You're attached to the sick care system for the rest of your days. This man, though, works out 5 days a week, like resistance training 5 days a week, gets in his 8,000 steps a day. And because of that physical resilience, because of that mental resilience also that creates, he is home now, able to play with his grandkids, able to basically do all the stuff that he wants to do. And that's what being fit, being strong, being healthy allowed him to do. So yes, you're less likely to land in hospital, but if you do, you got that body armor. You got that ability to overcome. You know what I'm saying? So this is where I really think we need to go. Get that momentum. Tell stories like Mike. Tell stories like my patient that had his cardiac arrest. And let's get moving, literally and figuratively.
That's phenomenal. I love hearing stories like that. You just think like, it's too far gone. He is in his 70s. It's very unlikely that you're going to turn around from that. It's never too late. It's never too far gone. Like, you can always do something. So for the listener, maybe they are somewhere on their journey. Maybe they're thinking about starting or restoring metabolic health. Maybe they're already metabolically healthy and they don't ever want to go down that road and they just want to continue to maintain their health. What are some of your main pillars? What are some things that people can do to again, improve or restore their metabolic health? You've mentioned exercise. We've talked a little bit about nutrition. What are some of the more important things you recommend for your patients?
Yeah, that's a great question. And usually on our platform, we'll cover 4 main huge pillars. So nutrition, movement, talk about stress reduction, and then community. But if I was going to be, like, I'm always about 80-20. What's gives you the biggest bang for your buck? In my humble opinion, it's the nutrition piece. It really is thinking about if you're, for example, overweight, or if you want to increase your lean muscle mass, it starts with what you eat. And if I were to choose 1 or 2 hacks, it's increase your protein intake for sure. And the other one that is, I think, relatively easy and sustainable is reducing your eating window. You might hear about intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. Introducing that often can give you some level of dividend. And I always say, just pick 1 or 2 things to work on, because things you want to create wins. You want to create the habit, and you want to fall in love with the process. Because I think a lot of people, you start going on a path, it's not sustainable. You get gassed, you get discouraged because you're not getting that benefit that you hope for it within that couple weeks, and then you fall off the wagon, if that's the right expression. But honestly, just you pick one or two things and focus on that, and do it in a way that you love it and that you could be proud of. Like, I'll give you an example. Even in our house, I'm raising 3 sons, and we often talk about our protein intake. We celebrate when their meal is half protein and they finish their plate. We say they get to go beast mode, and what that does is they get to take off their shirt, they get to stand on the chair and flex their muscles and go beast mode. That's the selling, right? Dude. And so they love they love the process, right? Like, that's the culture in this house. When we go out for a walk, or they have the little fitness trackers on their Fitbits. When they get their 20,000 steps, Selly, we celebrate that in our house, right? And it's the process and creating some positive momentum around that. But honestly, pick one or two things, whether it's what you eat, whether it's adding like the 80-22 when it comes to movement. If you lift weights, to me, that's the most important thing. Trumps cardio, trumps the other things. Lifting weights has so many benefits: reducing frailty, increasing your metabolic rate, increasing your insulin sensitivity. And then for the stress management, I say sleep is the 80-20 of that. And then with community, you just stack it onto one of the three pillars: eat with friends, exercise with friends, yoga, group meditation, whatever it is. Create an environment where you can connect with others. But you don't have to make it hard. But whatever you do, make it fun and celebrate the process.
Dude, I love that. I love that approach with your kiddos. If you're sitting at home wondering what a celly is a hockey word for celebration. Dude, if you're going to score a goal, you better damn well have a good celly in the bag to show the fans. Dangle Stipe celly, my friend. Like, that's so cool that you introduced that to your kiddos, man.
Oh, it's funny. I never even registered that celly was not a universal term, but you're right. But yeah, we want to get because what we always say is, like, be the change. Like, if you come into a cardiologist's office and he's telling you to lose weight and he weighs 260 pounds, like, screw that, right? Like, you know, if you're telling me to do that and you're not doing it for yourself. But for me, it's important for our kiddies to see, and others to see, that what we preach is our life, and we're excited about it. We're, you know, when I get asked at work, "Hey, I've been struggling with weight. I've been struggling with my energy. Any advice?" I love that. I love it. And part of me wonder, obviously, being a bit front facing with the media, people feel that that's content that we cover. But they also know that I live a lot of these things. They see it, you know. They see, you know, that I skipped out on breakfast. They know I'm having my first meal around lunchtime with the rest of them. They know that I'm playing hockey this weekend. They know that I've been hitting the gym, because we've been talking about with other nurses about some of their goals and expectations. So, like, I want to be the change. I want to live it and not have to almost verbalize as much, but just, hey, this is what it is. You know, Dr. K's life. And this is how we think these are the pillars, and this is why they're important.
Yeah, I love that. We have to be that example. I would never give any of my clients something that I couldn't do myself. And I'm so encouraged by this. I hope my wife doesn't mind that I rip my shirt off after dinner every day. As a carnivore, it's easy for me to get enough protein every day. As a defenseman, I never get to score, so I never get to have my own celly. So now I get to have a celly every single day without even putting it in the back of the net. It's great.
Yeah, no, I think get her to listen to this, and you get the green light to be able to go Hulk Hogan style.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dr. K. I appreciate it. How surprised have you been in this journey of nutrition, learning some of the things that you were saying would be bananas, maybe to even yourself before you went on this journey, like eating more protein, eating lots of animal protein, intermittent fasting, all these things we've heard are so terrible for us. We're told by so many different media outlets and health professionals that the best thing to do is a plant-based diet. It's best for the environment. It's best for all these other things, which absolutely that's not the case. A plant-based diet is a very much processed food, garbage diet. How surprised were you to learn that the healthiest food is actually meat, animal products, red meat in particular? Like, these are the foods that are going to help our metabolic health. How did you come around to that?
I think it was curiosity, because when you get this message that so much stuff is wrong, and then you're hearing people confidently say that there's upside to it. Like, I'm of the generation where they told me eat as frequently as possible to bolster up your metabolic rate. And so then you hear someone like Jason Fung talk about actually slow down and eat only during a specific time. And I remember hearing Peter Attia along the same time period say that he was doing it too. And it's like, wow, this is different. And then you start to get into the science, and then you start to read up on this content, and you be like, which other things are they telling me that are true, quotation marks, that aren't based on hardcore science? And so then your eyes are open. You can't not help to not see this stuff. So then, whether it is a plant-based diet, whether it is other parameters of health, like you can't. The lesson is you gotta learn this stuff for yourself. And if I've learned anything too, I'm not dogmatic with a lot of these things. Like, I'm realizing over time that health is personalized. Like, what works for you might not work for your wife or what have you. But there are some principles that I think are more true than not for most people. And this was, and in some ways it's been fun to realize that there's a lot to learn still. And at the end of the day, what you're learning here can help people feel way better than they are now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing stuff. And it's so self-rewarding. Once you're on this path, you'll continue to just feel so much better and add things back into your life that you thought you maybe couldn't do, or in too much pain or whatever. Like, this is your life. This is the quality of your life. It's your health span and your, lifespan, all of it together. It's so wonderful. You're doing such a great job sharing your message with your podcast, which is wonderful, by the way. I told you offline, I really want to make sure I tell you over the air that you have the absolute art and skill of listening that is wonderful. You do a great job listening to your guests. I really get a lot of information out there. I love that you're sharing this with your patients. I wanted to maybe close by, where you probably have the most impact, which is in your home. You mentioned your kids, who are absolutely adorable, by the way. I love seeing pictures of them on social media.
Thank you.
Absolutely adorable. How has this information changed your life and the life of your family, especially as you go around and see the lives of your patients or other kids on the hockey teams and their parents and all these other things when you go back out in the real world? Like, how has living this way and showing your family maybe a different alternative and a different way to live, how is that impacting the family directly?
Oh, I think it's been, I think my wife will first of all complain, because she gets annoyed when I get into the weeds with a lot of these things. But I think our kids, our family, they're going to go through cycles of health challenges, of whether it's mental or physical, and knowing that you have more than just pharmaceuticals that could be therapeutic has been really liberating or freeing in some ways. And I got to say, it's showing your kids, for example, ways to live healthy, talking about even some concepts of even the concept of not taking everything at face value. Like, they've heard dad go on the news. They've heard dad go off. They've heard it all. And they know that the battles that we've gone through. But yeah, just even that alone of our kids being a little bit more open-minded, realizing that you can't just take things for face value has been really important to me. But yeah, when we're in real life, it's been, I mean, like similar to my wife, I think they get annoyed when I read this next systematic review saying how the high protein diets have been beneficial and how intermittent fasting has been beneficial. I'm sure they get tired of it, but it's when they see dad excited though, they get excited too. Just like when I see Draisaitl put down that's Leon Draisaitl, the forward for the Edmonton Oilers, put away 3 goals. Yeah, they get excited too. So I'm gonna definitely continue on that path of just being like behaving and talking about things that I think are so important for them, and hopefully these things got generational impact. But I think so far so good.
That's amazing. I do have to ask you personally, after learning about this way of eating, has your hockey performance changed? I remember like a few awkward weeks of being on carnivore and I was kind of like low and felt like I was skating through slush. But then after a few weeks, like, man, I felt amazing. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I haven't noticed so much in hockey, but I did notice more when it came to lifting weight. Like I did feel like, especially fasted, initially just fasted, I felt like I was like I got some PRs for some specific lifts, but where I saw even more of a difference was ensuring like I'm well hydrated and my electrolytes were on point, like having a like salt in my water, for example. I noticed a big difference there. But so far, yeah, when it came to on the ice, I wouldn't say I've noticed any marked difference, but definitely pushing weight. I did notice a difference when adjusting the way I ate. Like especially, actually a big one, Casey, was the afternoon workouts. Because what I've done is I wouldn't call myself low carb, but I'm lower carb. And when I would now avoid that PM lull that I would get where I would get to the gym, say if it's an off day, like I'm not at work, get there at 2:30, and I was just dragging my heels. I'm like, I do not want to be here at all. But when you have that lower carb meal, I'm good to go. I'm ready to dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude.
Push that weight.
I love it. I noticed that too in the weight room. And as far as the hockey goes, it's never too late. You never know when Edmonton is going to need a new star. They're going to give you a buzz, dude, and you'll be ready to go. Step right in and get dangling, sniping, and selling on the ice with the Oilers. Dude,
that would be a dream.
That would be a dream. Dude, this has been such a wonderful conversation. There's so many gems in this conversation. Your work is so critically important. I'm so glad that you're out there sharing this message. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
I appreciate this, Casey. The easiest way to find us on social media, if you go anywhere, Kwadcast, KWADCAST. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, Twitter. The easiest way to find our content is kwadcast.substack.com. That's where we not only host our podcast, but we also have our blogs, our video content, our meal plans, our workouts now. It's our way of kind of having a one-stop shop for healthcare solutions. So that'd be a great place for people to find us. And message me. Pretty active on whichever platform is your preference, because once again, we're passionate about empowering people to get healthy, and any little thing we could do, we'll try and add to that. So yeah, really appreciate it.
That's wonderful. We will link to all of that in the show notes. Kwadwo, thank you so very much for everything you do. It was such a joy to meet you in person and hear your presentation. And I know you're very busy, so we appreciate your time today to share this message with us. So thank you very much, and it was such an honor to host you.
Oh man, let me tell you though, you represent, like, you were giving me some accolades for the interview style. You're a bloody natural, man. You made it seem so easy. It was a conversation. I was the whole time I've been smiling and having a great time. This is great. Like you got game, my friend. And so I really appreciate the opportunity, and And once again, thanks for the kind words.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for giving me the beast mode Selly suggestion. I'm definitely doing that starting at dinner tonight, so thank you a lot.
Anytime.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. Thank you, as always, so very much for listening to Boundless Body Radio. We really have such a passion for this work and for sharing our message. I've always said this, and I still believe it, that if I were to win the lottery today, that I would still show up for all of my clients and continue this work starting at 6 a.m. next Monday. It's just really a joy to be able to work with people and share our message, and to be able to share this message with people all over the world, be able to interview all kinds of different doctors and researchers, or just everyday people to share their stories and literally inspire hundreds of thousands of listeners to our show. Last year, we decided to start our Patreon page to be able to share premium content for a subscription fee, which included private coaching, early releases of our podcast, which was unedited, and also my special project of making the Boundless Body Radio premium podcast, which is basically the highlights of all of the hundreds of episodes that we have done, all condensed down into a masterclass of a particular topic, including different macronutrients and also ketogenic diets. The subscription model really wasn't exactly a smash success, to say the least, but I did put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into those episodes, and I'm really just not that comfortable with them sitting around behind a paywall when they could be out helping people. So we have decided to terminate our Patreon page. I will be releasing all of the content that we created for the Boundless Body Radio Premium Podcast on our normal show, Boundless Body Radio, for free. So be on the lookout for that in the coming months, and be sure to leave any feedback that you might have. If you enjoyed them, we'd really love to hear from you. They were really fun to make, and I really enjoyed reviewing all of our content to create them. But like I said, if they're not out there helping people, I'm just not really okay with that, and I really want them to get out and help. So remember that you can always book a free complimentary 30-minute session with us on our website at myboundlessbody.com. We've really enjoyed connecting with people all over the world to discuss all things health and fitness, and so feel free to do that and take advantage of that. And as always, thank you again so much for listening to Boundless Body Radio.